So welcome to the next in our online messages brought to you by the folks at the Raleigh Congregational Church. This is Reverend Tom Bentley, the pastor. We hope these messages can help you in your life journey. You know, it's hard being a human being, and it's most difficult living with other human beings. The gospel can help us get a sense of how to work through that. If you'd like to know more about the Raleigh Congregational Church, there will be some information at the end of this video. So again, thanks for being with us.
Grace to you and peace from our friend Jesus. None of us get a chance to ask to be born. We are simply born, and we're born into a world that is available to us, but over which we have little control, especially in the beginning. We inherit a group of people, an involuntary association, let's call it, and that is our family. We have to have two parents to be born, a mother and a father. And if there's more than one child, then we have siblings. It's an involuntary association, however, because we really can't choose what's happening for a very long time. And in that process and that time, we put ourselves together. We adapt to circumstances that are happening around us. We build up what you can call a personality. Then comes the day when we are invited or forced or whatever to leave this involuntary association and enter into voluntary associations, friendships, groups, community, in other words. Under our laws, voluntary associations can incorporate and become entities or institutions. A good example of a voluntary association is a church, but there are others. Nonprofit charities and programs are voluntary associations. You enter into a membership, you take on the rules of that association, and you conduct yourself according to some external predetermined way of moving about and having your being. But into this voluntary association, you have brought everything that you were in your involuntary association. As we seek to build and renew community, particularly in our democracy, we have to deal with human beings. We have to deal with one another. Well, it turns out that what we developed as a person in our involuntary association, we carry around with us for the rest of our lives. Dr. Murray Bowen was a psychiatrist. He was born in 1913 and he died in 1990. And as a physician in the Second World War, he noticed people had survived trauma. He was a psychiatrist, and he worked with the mental health disorders that he saw. He began to realize that human beings navigated the world very much according to methods they developed as children in their families. He began to study families as systems, and he noticed a number of critical empirical observations which are informative to us today. In our involuntary association called family, we are not alone. We are adapting one to the other and constructing our role.
Dr. Barron discovered that the person whose behavior was the healthiest in a family was one who could stand apart from the circumstances that were happening. He identified this as being in a place of differentiation, or being a differentiated person. Differentiation can be defined as the ability to be in emotional contact with others, yet still autonomous in one's own emotional functioning. Differentiation is a product of a way of thinking that translates into a way of being. Such changes are reflected in the ability to be in emotional contact with a difficult, emotionally charged problem and not feel compelled to preach about what others should do, not rush in to fix the problem, and not pretend to be detached by emotionally insulating oneself.
Differentiation is a healthy place to stand away from the stress and the anxiety and the conflict in the family system. See what's happening and also acknowledge each person for who they are. Accepting people just the way they are. Not in an approving way that I'm so glad you're an addict, but rather that person's system makes sense for them. That person's behavior, rather, is making sense for them, often driven by the family system.
Jesus' family is mentioned in the gospel a number of times. Sometimes he was in conflict with them, and here we have a reading in the Gospel of Mark in the 3rd chapter. Just then his mother and brothers showed up. Standing outside, they relayed a message that they wanted a word with him. He was surrounded by the crowd when he was given the message. "Your mother and brothers and sisters are out looking for you." Jesus responded, "Who do you think are my mother and brothers?" Looking around, taking in everyone seated around him, he said, "Right here, right in front of you, my mother and my brothers. Obedience is thicker than blood. The person who obeys God's will is my brother and sister and mother."
That is a testimony of a differentiated person, a radically differentiated person, who has stepped away from a situation, not just his family of origin, but also his culture of origin. He is standing there and he is insisting on a legitimate way of communicating, despite everybody's adherence to a system of dysfunction. I'm thinking of the Roman Empire. I'm thinking of 2,000 years ago, but I'm also thinking of our human family. I use that term family intentionally. We are all in this together. It turns out that we are in one big family system, and we are all reacting in the negative to our mutual dysfunction, unhappiness, and breakdown. The power of change comes to this community when one individual changes their behavior. It would be helpful if I or you insisted on changing that behavior. What to do, we might ask. Well, this differentiation of stepping back and seeing the legitimacy of the interactions we see, not, again, appreciating them and enjoying them as much as observing them and recognizing how we are driven to do what we do as human beings by a host of impulses which can be sorted out. Therapists find that if anxiety can be lowered in a community system and trust can be built, human beings can make breakthroughs about their ability to communicate and be in a special relationship one to the other. The call of the church, which is this voluntary association that we choose, the call is to enter into the space that Jesus makes for us. A powerful differentiation, a powerful place to stand for healing, help, love, affirmation, forgiveness, and ultimately transformation. I do believe that just as a family who has an addicted child is reinforcing that addiction through their behavior, and if any one person in that family system really changes their behavior and begins to be differentiated, everyone improves. In our voluntary association of groups, we still are thrown back into the involuntary association of our human family. We are called to change by the gospel. We are called to be a powerful influence for love, encouragement, forgiveness, so that we don't have to live in the high anxiety, lies, deceits, and anxieties created by the crazy system we call the human race. We can step away. I do believe that in the acts of Jesus Christ, a new alignment of human consciousness occurred, and that from his birth, through his life, teaching, in his death, and in what we call the resurrection was a transformative order of realignment, of adjustment, of building and renewing something new, building something powerful that cannot be defeated. Jesus pulled all of us in the direction to God, and we can be of God if we can step into his wise and differentiated place of grace. That's the invitation, to get off the crazy stuff, the violence, yes, the personal sins, but those are not the issue. The issue is rather how we connect to and treat one another in this system of human beings. When we realize how close we are with one another and how critical each of us is to connecting to the other, how critical what we have to offer is for the benefit of all as well as for the disarray of all, that's the beginning of our ability to live in the power and the love and the grace offered through faith. Faith in this person, Jesus, who called question to the crazy system and invited all of us to now be brothers and sisters in a family of love. In his name, amen.
So thank you for spending time with us. If you'd like to know more about the First Congregational Church of Rowley, you can go online at firstchurchrowley.org. And of course, we'd always like to hear from you. You can call us anytime at 978-948-3993. So again, peace and best wishes. Take care. Goodbye.